Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Authorities in Flagler County, Florida say that a 22-year-old driver and his 20-year-old passenger are each facing multiple charges this week following a bizarre hit-and-run case that turned into a police pursuit. According to reports, the incident began sometime on the afternoon of June 21st when a Florida Fish and Wildlife officer witnessed an SUV blow through an intersection near State Road 100 East and Old Kings Road South in the city of Flagler Beach. The SUV struck multiple vehicles as it went through the intersection, causing the officer to turn on his emergency lights. However, the driver refused to pull over. As the officer called for backup, the SUV headed onto the property of nearby Old Kings Elementary School, where the vehicle proceeded to drive around on the school's running track. The pursuit then continued into the Flagler County landfill before finally coming to an end in a wooded area where the SUV appeared to get stuck on a concrete barrier. When the vehicle was surrounded, officers instructed the driver and passenger, later identified as 22-year-old Stephen Peterson and 20-year-old Victoria Averill, to get out. However, they refused to comply. They were then forcefully removed and placed under arrest, at which point officers realized that Peterson was only wearing socks and what appeared to be some sort of cloth tied around his waist. Police say that they're not sure why the 22-year-old wasn't wearing more clothing. Peterson now faces charges including eluding police, leaving the scene of a crash, resisting arrest, trespassing on school grounds, and marijuana possession. Averill, meanwhile, was arrested on drug charges and trespassing on school grounds. Authorities in Detroit, Michigan say that a 35-year-old man is facing a slew of serious charges this week after he allegedly set fire to a gas station convenience store with the business's clerk terrifyingly trapped inside. According to reports, the incident took place in the early morning hours of June 20th at a Sunoco gas station on the 19,300 block of West 7 Mile Road. It began when the 35-year-old suspect, later identified as Julian Waddell Miller, went into the gas station's convenience store at around 2:50 a.m. and got into an argument with the 27-year-old clerk who was working there. It's unclear what the argument was about, but thanks to harrowing surveillance footage, we know what happened next. The footage shows Miller as he dumps gasoline and then the contents of a trash bin onto the floor of the business's entrance while holding a blue blowtorch in one of his hands. After a few more words, Miller bends down and lights the pile of debris on fire, which ignites into an inferno in a matter of seconds. While the 27-year-old clerk was trapped behind the counter, he somehow managed to escape. He was rushed to a local hospital with first-degree burns when emergency workers arrived at the scene. The fire was also thankfully put out before it got out of control, something that was of serious concern considering, it was a gas station. Thanks to the video evidence, police were able to track down and arrest Miller later that same day. He is now facing charges including intent to murder, first-degree arson, and other property damage and assault offenses. Authorities in Coos County, Oregon say that a woman is finally in custody and facing charges this week, nearly 2 years after she allegedly arranged the murder of her ex-husband and then fled the country. According to reports, the incident began at around 3:30 a.m. on August 2, 2021, when police in the city of North Bend were called to a residence on Stanton Avenue with reports of an emergency. They arrived to find 45-year-old Craig Jackson, a well-known and respected doctor in the area, dead in his residence. He had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. Investigators were told by Craig's wife, Yen Zhao, that 2 unknown men had broken into their home that morning. A struggle had ensued, during which the 45-year-old was fatally shot. The suspects then took off. Though the crime initially looked like a random home invasion, that began to change when detectives turned their attention to Craig's ex-wife, Raina Gabriella Jackson. The pair had gone through a contentious divorce, and while it had been finalized a few years prior, they were still reportedly having ongoing issues with child custody. As authorities looked deeper into the situation, they came to believe that Reyna had set the entire crime up, which she had intentionally staged to look like a home invasion. However, before the case could make any further progress, she allegedly fled the United States, traveling back to her native Guatemala. According to reports, for nearly the last 2 years, investigators have worked with various other law enforcement agencies in an attempt to track Reyna down. That effort finally paid off last week when U.S. Marshals learned that she planned to travel back into the United States, managing to arrest her when she landed in Atlanta, Georgia on June 14th. Unbeknownst to Reyna, the previous month she had been the subject of a secret indictment in connection with her ex-husband's death, and arrest warrants had been issued. She is now facing charges including second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and is awaiting extradition back to Oregon. Authorities in El Paso, Texas say that a 48-year-old woman is facing charges this week after she fatally shot her rideshare driver, later claiming that she believed he was trying to kidnap her and take her across the southern border. The incident took place sometime on June 16th, when the suspect, 48-year-old Phoebe Coppus, ordered an Uber. Though a native of Kentucky, she was reportedly in El Paso visiting her boyfriend and was planning to travel to the Speaking Rock Casino where he worked to meet him once he finished his shift. Coppus was picked up by 52-year-old Daniel Piedra Garcia, who had only recently started driving for Uber after having recovered from a knee surgery. The trip took a tragic turn when, while driving on the highway, Coppus apparently saw a sign for Juarez, Mexico. Allegedly believing that Daniel was trying to kidnap her and take her over the border, she reached into her purse, pulled out a handgun, and shot him in the head. Almost instantly, Daniel lost control of the vehicle, crashing into a road barrier as he fell unconscious. Though the 52-year-old was rushed to the hospital after officers arrived at the scene, sadly, he succumbed to his injuries several days later. Despite Coppus's claims that she believed she was being kidnapped, investigators say that there was no evidence that this was the case. According to data from the Uber trip, Daniel was simply following the route laid out for him by the GPS, and they were in fact not headed in the direction of a border crossing. On top of this, detectives say that Coppus did not attempt to make use of any of Uber's in-app safety features prior to shooting Daniel, and didn't even attempt to call 911 until she had taken photos of the injured driver, which she sent to her boyfriend. According to reports, Coppus was in the middle of being picked up by her boyfriend from the crime scene when officers arrived and placed her under arrest. While Coppus was originally charged with aggravated assault causing serious bodily injury, this has since been upgraded to murder in light of Daniel's death. Coppus currently remains in custody on a $1.5 million bond. An Ohio couple are warning fellow parents to keep a careful eye on their children this week following their disturbing close encounter with an alleged predator. According to reports, the incident took place at around 4 p.m. on June 17th, when a woman from the city of Norwood named Jamie Spradlin says her 4-year-old son ran inside to get her. He had been playing outside in front of their house on his bicycle and said that there was a woman who came to talk to him. When Jamie went outside, she came face to face with the woman in question, who said her name was Lisa. Lisa identified herself as a worker from Child Protective Services, saying that she had received a complaint about Jamie and her husband Tim, and that she wanted to do a home inspection. Lisa pulled out a badge that had her name on it and knew all of the names of the couple's children. However, after Lisa left, Jamie and Tim couldn't shake the feeling that something about the interaction wasn't right. Lisa hadn't left any contact information for them either, which only raised their suspicions further. Even so, when Jamie and Tim reviewed the surveillance video from outside their home that day, they were completely unprepared for what they saw. The footage reportedly shows Lisa walking up to their young son and talking to him. Disturbingly, she proceeds to stroke the boy's hair and asks him to come home with her 3 times. At one point, she allegedly claims that she has a nearby vehicle and that there is a, quote, really pretty car seat in there for him. When Jamie and Tim attempted to contact CPS themselves to inquire about what had happened, they were even more horrified by what they learned. That's when they decided to contact police. It turned out that while the name the woman had given Jamie was real, her name was in fact Lisa Necrelli, she did not work for Child Protective Services. The 44-year-old was subsequently arrested for criminal child enticement, burglary, and impersonating an officer. After being taken into custody, Necrelli allegedly admitted speaking to Jamie and Tim's son, though stated that it wasn't what it looked like. She claimed that she had seen the boy while on her way home from the grocery store, and after feeling he wasn't being properly supervised, attempted to scare his parents by pretending to be a CPS officer. She also apparently admitted that she had been drinking beer all day, and at the time of the incident had been on her way home from buying more. At the time of this recording, Necrelli remains in custody on $10,000 bond. Authorities in Pinellas County, Florida say that a woman is facing charges in connection with a bizarre trespassing case this week after she allegedly made her way onto a U.S. Coast Guard station, stole one of their vehicles, and used it to get onto the runway of an adjacent airport. According to officials from the county sheriff's office, the incident took place sometime last week when the woman, who has not been identified by name, scaled the fence of U.S. Coast Guard Air Station Clearwater. Once on the grounds of the facility, she allegedly stole one of the Coast Guard's tricycles, which is apparently one among a number of different vehicles used by the service to transport equipment and tools around the facility. After stealing the tricycle, the woman reportedly next tried to gain access to one of the Coast Guard's aircrafts, though was unsuccessful. She then drove the stolen tricycle onto the taxiway of the adjacent St. Pete Clearwater International Airport, where she allegedly tried to board an Allegiant airline flight to Argentina. The woman was apparently stopped by employees who noticed her riding past no trespassing signs at Terminal A while watching surveillance cameras. She was placed under arrest and is now facing felony charges for trespassing onto an operational area of an airport and grand theft. Following the bizarre incident, a spokesman for the airport attempted to reassure the public that the Coast Guard facility does its best to maintain necessary safety standards, saying that the incident would be investigated by the TSA. A Texas church pastor is being lauded for his heroic actions this week after he recently came to the defense of his elderly neighbors during the middle of a terrifying home invasion. According to reports, the incident unfolded on June 15th when Pastor Heath Haynes and his wife were enjoying a quiet day at their Northwest Houston home. They were sitting in a front room together when suddenly they heard someone yelling for help. It was their elderly neighbor, Sharon Cohen. Immediately, the couple got up and went outside, with Heath running ahead to see what was wrong. At first, he assumed it was some kind of medical emergency, though things took a terrifying turn when he caught up with Sharon on the sidewalk. She said that someone was attacking her 85-year-old husband, Earl, inside their house. As Heath ran towards the property, the front door slammed shut and locked. When he looked through the front window, he could see the suspect, later identified as 54-year-old Shane Jennings, on top of Earl, who he was pinning to the ground with a coat rack while rifling through his pockets. Unable to get inside, Heath began banging on the door and windows, only for Jennings to pretend like nothing was wrong and that he was the homeowner, saying that he would be right there. This continued until Heath yelled that he could see Jennings, who then headed towards an exit near the back of the house. At this point, the pastor's wife was already dialing 911, so he decided he would try his best to delay Jennings in whatever way he could. He pulled out his phone and began recording as he headed up the driveway at the side of the residence. Upon coming face to face with the suspect, Heath began questioning him, asking him what he was doing and why he was attacking Earl. Jennings denied everything and said that he hadn't done anything wrong. Seeing that Jennings had some car keys, Heath pinned him up against a fence, telling him to drop what he had in his hands. He did this until Jennings claimed that he couldn't breathe, at which point Heath let him go, believing that he wouldn't be able to escape the enclosed area. Jennings allegedly had other ideas though. Apparently still in possession of at least one set of car keys, he made a break for Earl's truck, managing to get inside and start the vehicle before Heath could stop him. Video footage of the incident appears to show Jennings running over a fence at the scene and crashing into another vehicle several times on the driveway before fleeing the scene in the stolen truck. Fortunately, his time on the run was short-lived, and Jennings was caught and arrested by police later that same day. He is now facing 6 felony charges, including aggravated assault of an elderly person and assault of a peace officer. Thankfully, it appears that neither Sharon nor Earl were seriously injured as a result of the terrifying incident. It's unclear exactly what Jennings' alleged motive was, though police now suspect that the crime was targeted. When he came to the door at the beginning of the incident, he reportedly knew Earl's name, at first telling Sharon that he wanted a glass of water and needed to use her bathroom, then saying that Earl owed him money. That's when he allegedly barged his way inside. On top of this, family members say that a few weeks prior, Earl returned home saying that he had been mugged, though at the time, no one knew what to make of this because he suffers from dementia. As for Heath Haynes, he reportedly credits his heroic intervention to his faith. In an interview, he said that he has a self-preservation instinct just like anyone else, but in the moment, he was, quote, acting on something that's deeper inside. He further attributed being in the right place at the right time to divine intervention, saying that he and his wife never usually sit in the room where they heard Sharon calling for help that day. What was supposed to be a fun high school graduation trip turned into an unimaginable nightmare for the friends and family of an 18-year-old Ohio woman earlier this month, when she was allegedly murdered by her ex-boyfriend in a room of their vacation rental home. According to reports, 18-year-old Natalie Martin, Blake Linkus, and 5 of their close friends had rented a house together in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as part of a trip celebrating their recent graduation from Philo High School, back in their hometown of Duncan Falls, Ohio. Though Natalie and Blake had broken up after nearly 3 years of dating, they were still close, and Blake was apparently trying to get the relationship back together. This was despite the fact that they had split up following a violent altercation earlier this year in which Blake reportedly attacked Natalie at his house in front of a group of their friends. As far as their friends were concerned, during the beginning of the trip, things apparently seemed normal between Natalie and Blake. On June 5th, the pair got into an argument over Natalie texting another man, though this appeared to be resolved quickly. Late that evening, the group went to a local club together, but Natalie left early saying that she wasn't feeling well. Blake went with her, with the pair heading back to the rental house. The next 2 people to arrive at the house reportedly got in at around 10:45, having to enter through the back because no one was answering the front door. Around this time, one of them allegedly heard what sounded like 3 loud thuds, though when they investigated the house's living room, nothing seemed to be amiss. The door to Blake and Natalie's room was locked, so the friends assumed that they were simply asleep. The rest of the group all got home within the next few hours, with none of them seeing or hearing anything out of the ordinary. However, at 9 a.m. the following morning, things allegedly took a horrifying turn when Blake exited his bedroom alone. He had allegedly stabbed himself in the chest and claimed that Natalie wasn't waking up. Other members of the group rushed inside the bedroom to find Natalie lying on the floor. They attempted to perform CPR, but sadly, it was too late. The teenager had already been dead for some time. Blake has now been accused of strangling Natalie to death and was arrested 2 days later on murder charges. Disturbingly, investigators say they now believe that after killing Natalie, Blake sat with her body for several hours before alerting his friends. Those that knew Natalie say that they are stunned and heartbroken by the awful tragedy. The 18-year-old had her entire life ahead of her, and at the time of her death, was apparently planning to go to college to earn a degree in child education. At the time of this recording, Blake Linkus remains in custody without bond. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.